Okay, I'll call this meeting to order for Thursday, May 2nd at 7:02. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item number 3. Is there any additions to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, I move to approve the agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, everyone's here. Item number 5, I move to approve the regular minutes of April 18th, 2019. Is there a second? Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Abstain. I wasn't here.
Okay.
You're listed as present,
Well,
so
then we
that
should
should be corrected.
say it.
You're listed as present. Oh, no, I'm mistaken. I'm mistaken.
Okay, item number 6 is the storm water management and village center redevelopment presentation by Terry Hahn from LAD Land Planners. She's
So good evening, how you guys doing?
Good.
Excellent. So Terry Hahn, Principal LAD APC, I've been working with Ruben in the town on what's called the stormwater, planning for stormwater management, village redevelopment in Warehouse Point, which is a DEC grant. So back at the end of March, the beginning of April, we submitted the existing conditions report, which in its entirety is this big. Okay.
This is the
And so
conditions report.
this is the short version. All right. So, did I give you one of those already? No. Okay. There you go. This is the short version. It's the same as the larger version without the appendices. So I just want to go through what this is, sort of where we are and what happens next, so that we can see what's going on. Short. So this is the status report for what we're calling the end of the existing conditions project. Overall context for those of you who haven't been involved is this is Warehouse Point, runs from the town of Enfield to the Connecticut River and basically to 91. In this particular case, it does include some properties across 91 that now drain towards Warehouse Point. The project itself has been working for about a little bit more than 6 months, 7 months, and we did all kinds of visits with building inspector, the town engineer, conversations with the first selectman, meetings with you guys, meetings with the board of selectmen to try and get data to put together all in a report as a sort of an overall picture of Warehouse Point and stormwater related issues. We also were out on the site for, I think it's close to 20 different storm events since the project started, including just over the weekend when the river peaked, which hopefully that's as high as it goes for this spring.
How high did it peak?
It peaked at 5, well, according to the river gauge in Thompsonville, it peaked at 15.3 feet, which is the equivalent of somewhere between 22 and 24 feet on the topo map. No, that's
Okay, and flood is 35 or something?
the flood elevation is 15 feet on the river gauge.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was 0.3 of a foot above what they consider the extreme flood conditions.
Mhm.
When you go out there, just a simple thing, the The river, when it raises up to elevation 20 on the topography map, which is approximately about 9 or 10 feet on the river gauge, you get a backwater condition because it covers over the discharge point from the blue ditch. So you start to have water coming from the Connecticut River back past the wastewater treatment plant and around the back of the recreation fields.
Did most of that flood back in there or not this time?
We did have, there was a local flood, but on, over the weekend, it did in fact get up to elevation almost 23, 24 feet. So it did actually come out into the grass with a great deal of enthusiasm and filled up the stream and everything else. But it doesn't go back any further, or it didn't come out any past that. In 2000,
It didn't cover baseball time?
they did not cover the baseball diamond. There was still a little bit of room. One of the things that we discovered as we were going through all of this event is the blue ditch, which is the drainage way for that, the runoff from Warehouse Point goes ultimately into what's known as the blue ditch, which traverses from the back of Geisler's, across Bridge Street, around the properties along Main Street, eventually crosses Main Street and gets into the recreation area down on South Water Street, around the wastewater treatment plant, through pipe underneath 91, and then ultimately out again across Bridge Street. The stormwater calculations have confirmed it, what we had seen in the visual evaluation, and what you guys are all familiar with, which is that the Warehouse Point stormwater peak is somewhere between 8 and 12 hours maximum after a rain event. So for example, the 2-inch rain event plus that we had over last Friday, Saturday, locally the water filled up all of the ditches and went out into the grass in the places where it typically does. And then 8 hours later, it all goes back down. That cleared long before anything happened at the river. Okay, the river was at the same height during that entire process. And the river only goes up if the 2-inch rain event went up 91 towards Springfield. And if it rains 2 inches up north, then you'll see a rise in the river. Just because it rains 2 inches here doesn't mean that the river itself rises. So one of the things that we found is that disconnect between the stormwater that is produced by the runoff within Warehouse Point has a good 8, 12, almost 24 hours separation from when the peak that might come down from the river is. And from our perspective, that's a good thing. Okay? That means that the stormwater comes through, it dissipates through the system, and it doesn't by its very nature cause an undue amount of conflict between the stormwater from Warehouse Point and the stormwater from the runoff from the river. So that's a good thing. And that is what we were sort of hoping to find, or we didn't, it's not unexpected. But there are certain things that we have gone through and started to evaluate. For example, this flow, catch basin is in here, and this drainage ditch, which was relatively recently cleaned out by the highway department, needs to actually be about another 2 feet lower. The sediment load right off where the pipe comes out here, pipe is actually always underwater. The water comes out and there's got to be a good 2-3 feet of sediment in front of the pipe. So the water raises up and goes over that sediment and then continues down the swale. So there remains a sediment disposition issue within these swales that we can do something about, which will help increase storage.
Do you know how far up the river the tide actually comes up? Down.
This is an unscientific thing, but I was always told that it's south of Middletown, way south of Middletown, the tide.
No, part of it was tidal.
I'm sorry.
Part of it was tidal to the Bissell Bridge.
Well, it's somewhere, but it doesn't come up this far. Okay.
I was told it was as far as Windsor. That was not scientific either. So
Let me find out the real information and I'll get back to you.
Well, I don't know, does that have any impact to, when you're planning for this and, you have the flood part like we did, and if the tide is not lowering, it's going the other way, does that in consideration of this, or doesn't affect it?
It doesn't, at this point, there was no title consideration.
No
with
impact,
respect to-
okay.
And there's nothing that has come up that is relative to title
Okay.
impacts at this location. Yeah, that's,
Okay.
I think there is some impact when Middletown floods and that kink, you know, the little pressure point in Middletown, then it starts to back up. That might have a potential impact. But so far, that's not part of the overall stormwater system. So we've completed the existing stormwater calculations to model the entire watershed. So what we're looking at for the next step will be to say, okay, well, what happens when we add impervious surface? What happens when we add additional development within Warehouse Point? At what point is too much impervious surface get to the point where we have, instead of that zone between 8 hours and 24 hours when it's not making a connection to the river, what happens when the peak becomes longer, okay? Which is what tends to happen with the impervious surface calculations. The more water you have, the longer the peak lasts. So
But
is there...
the shorter time it comes to peak, though, isn't it?
It is, well, right now, it's pretty much instantaneous. It's not going to get much shorter than what it currently is. It's just a question of whether or
So
not...
adding more impervious surface should not...
It shouldn't change that time of concentration, where you're using a very limited time of concentration anyway, so that should have an impact on... There's more water, which means that it takes longer for the volume to go through. So that will be the next part, is to look at, okay, is there a point, and we've broken down the watershed into whole little pieces that might relate to future development areas, so we can look at what that might be in the overall model. And let's say it's, you know, one watershed, once you get above 20% impervious, then that starts to have a problem, so we know, or is it 60%, or is it 90%? You know, we'll find that threshold, and that's really sort of where we're going to be headed. Again, for those of you who are unfamiliar just with what the blue ditch is, basically the drainage flows from the north past Pleasant to the wetlands behind the Geislers, gets picked up in a pipe, goes underneath Geislers, Bridge Street, and then down and out. There is a secondary branch of the blue ditch this way that is not related to the warehouse. It has to do with 91 and the properties on Route 5.
The pipe area, the diameter of the pipe is what, 20 inches?
Where
Right where you got
the actual discharge is 72 inches.
about,
Under 91, there are 2 of them. It looks like it's 36 and then probably an 18 or something like that. Yes, it's a much bigger pipe than we anticipated. A couple things, just we were able to hit pretty much all the peak moments along the river during this study. We hit it in November, we hit it in December, and we hit it in January, and we hit it in April. So just to get an understanding, one of the best ways that we found for visual clues as to where we were at was on the drive, the emergency access drive. If you count how far the water is up the little posts on the side, then that corresponds with the topo lines. So it makes it fairly easy. It's a little unscientific, but it's clear and consistent. Prior to this, those were the 2 generally here. See, you can see the 15 feet. That's the river gauge at Thompsonville, and that's considered to be flood level. Is the river gauge on Thompsonville. So back in December, right before Christmas Eve, it hit 15 point, a little less than 15.3. And just how much it changes. So on the low level where you can see the beach and you can see the pipe, that's down at a river gauge at 9.5. And then when it's all covered and you have backwater and everything else, that's at 15 plus feet. So those just gives us an idea of what we're talking about. Most recent one, over the weekend here on the 27th with the big rain, that 2+ inches of rain. The river was already high for spring flooding, but it didn't actually peak for another 24 hours because the rain actually did go north, and then that water all came down. So the 2 inches in Warehouse Point didn't make a direct impact on the river per se, but it did ultimately go another foot higher from on the 27th to another foot higher on the 28th, as you're looking on the topo, on the stream bank. So on the 28th, it got all the way past, there's a little gazebo in Volunteer Park with some posts that actually got underneath that gazebo. It just goes where it goes, and you can tell when you walk that shore, there's a fairly consistent vegetative line that shows you where the flood limit is. So at this point, in addition to the stormwater part of this, yes?
But before I forget, so when you observed that and that the water was up that high, Steve, you could probably remember better that on Water Street, when it was probably 25 years ago when we had that big rainstorm, wasn't the water on the east side of the street? It had climbed across those houses that are on the west side?
Well, I can tell you the 2011,
I think so, yes.
2011 storm, it got up to elevation 29. And so it didn't quite cross the road at the wastewater treatment plant. But there's an image in the picture from the wastewater treatment plant operators showing that the water was up almost 4 feet against the back garage door. So that was fairly recently.
Okay, this is probably in 84, 85.
Yep, yes. And in 84, 85, there was approximately, based on the information I have, a good 10 flood related insurance claims at that particular time, at that particular.
And I think in 1958 it was higher yet. It was across the street at that point.
Yeah.
And in 38 it was well across the street all the way up to the center of warehouse 24.
We're dealing with that like once every 20 years. We're dealing with that like once every 20 years. It's
Yeah.
Well, one of the
more
things
regular than I thought.
that it's interesting that you should mention that. One of the things that has happened, and what we did in the drainage calculations, is that the state has, if they haven't already done it, they've been encouraging everyone to change the nature of the rain events. So when we ran the drainage calculations, we're using much higher rain events. So a 10-year storm is now 5+ inches, where that previously was a 25-year storm. So the storm events and the amount of water that's being calculated as part of the drainage calculations has been lifted up higher. Because we get more water faster. When we get more water faster, then it doesn't give anybody a chance to infiltrate or evaporate, it just runs. So you have more volume as it discharges. So that's something to take into consideration.
Okay.
Other things that we did as part of the existing conditions, we also looked at other aspects of Warehouse Point. We looked at parking, what's out there, what's needed, what issues have come up since we started the study. We looked at where pedestrians are walking, how many there are, and where they're generally going, where their obstacles to completing a walk is. For example, the hill on Bridge Street is a little bit of what we call an obstacle from a pedestrian perspective, right? Not only that, but there's no sidewalk there. So that becomes an issue. So you have 2 hills on Bridge Street. You have the first one going up to Gardner, and then you have the other one that goes up to Route 5. And the Gardner one's got sidewalks, and everybody does, in fact, walk there. There's a surprising number of people who walk in that area. But the one that goes up to Route 5, that's not only does it go underneath 91, but the additional hill, that's a little bit of a major obstacle that needs to, hopefully will be addressed with the development of that parcel. That'd be great. We also looked at land use with what's out there currently. There's a whole bunch of interesting statistics about the righty. Within Warehouse Point, there's 380 acres. There are 322 parcels of land. Of the 322 parcels, 63%, 204 are residential properties, of which 164 are single-family homes. There are 20 multifamily properties, 19 commercial, 12 institutional, and 63 vacant parcels. Many of those vacant parcels are the ones that are on South and North Water Street.
What constitutes an institutional parcel? Is that churches?
Church, daycare, the boys' school,
Yeah.
you have a couple, in many, the town's property, so the recreation area, the wastewater treatment plant, they would be considered institutional.
Yeah.
From a land use perspective. Let's see, a couple other interesting things. Within the land itself, there are only 17 properties that are 4 acres in size or larger. Within of all those 322 parcels. 17
And
there
that's
are
over what area again? It's from,
over the entire warehouse point.
okay, all where?
There are only 17 properties that are 4 acres in size or larger, of which there are only 6 that are 10 acres or larger, of which that includes the town sewer plant, the field between North Water Street and North Main Street, you know, the one is back there, the sports complex, the Connecticut State Boys Home, the parking lot, and the vacant area at the field corporate center, and the vacant land between Holcomb Terrace and 91. So those are the big parcels. There are 37 properties that are 1 acre, between 1 acre and 4 acres, which is 41% of those are located on Main Street, that are between 1 and 4 acres. And then there are 268 parcels out of the 320 plus that are 1 acre or less, of which 83% of the total number of parcels within Warehouse Point. And then within that, there are 54 parcels, or 17% that are half acre or less. No, between half acre and 1 acre. There's 102 parcels that are a quarter acre or less.
Is that demographic important?
It is important in that, the reason for that we're looking at that saying, okay, so what is the model in terms of what is the likely future buildability? And when you look at the smaller properties, you realize that those are probably going to be limited to an addition or something else that might come into play, unless you can aggregate them together to get something a little bit bigger, a little bit more buildable, to create something a little different, in which case those impervious surface numbers would be slightly different. So from a planning for impervious surface perspective, the size of those lots does matter. Yep. So out of this, we have a couple of observations. The first one is we've already talked about, that the Blue Ditch watershed is generally through the system in between 8 and 24 hours after a storm. Very quick. The road crossings within the watershed, Bridge Street, Holcomb, Spring, Main Street, they all function as creating ponds behind the pipes. So when we model the stormwater, it's a series of stream flow to pond, pipe, stream flow, pond. So it's a fairly complicated stormwater model, but it also gives us a much better idea of how that really works, because that is in fact what happens. So the water comes down, it pools at Holcomb, and then it goes to the pipe, it releases, it pools again at Main Street. And these are all relatively small ponds, but still that affects the amount of time that it takes to go through the watershed. It also gives us an idea of where, if we were going to add some additional storage, for whatever reason that might be, either to make it faster or do water quality, we have some sort of easy areas in which to look at as to where that might be improved. Connecticut River Peak after a rain event is at least 24 hours after the
Excuse
end
me.
of it.
But before I
sorry.
forget, Gary, the one you were just on,
Yep.
about having storage areas,
Mhm.
is that something that I see today, that when they're building homes, that they put in like a big
The big
Ditch.
detention basins.
Yeah, that's more common today than it ever was. Is that kind of the idea you have for that?
It wouldn't be quite like that because the Connecticut River is what they call a fourth order stream. So with a fourth order stream, anything that drains directly to it, you want to get out of there so that the peak travels past the peak related to the Connecticut River, which is what it currently does.
Okay.
When you do a detention basin, it slows the peak down.
Mhm.
So the bigger the detention basin or the longer it stays as storage, from a detention perspective, then the more likely you are to have that conflict between the peaks. What we're talking about is, for example, flood capacity rather than stormwater storage and or water quality. So it's not, it's storage from the back end from the flood versus from the front end for stormwater.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. The upstream conditions affect the Connecticut River much more than any actual rain event in East Windsor. That seems to be fairly significant. If it rains more in East Windsor than it did upstream, the Connecticut River might not even be affected. So not anything, not more than a 3 or 4 foot change in fashion of the Connecticut River. When the Connecticut River reaches approximately an elevation of 20 feet, as shown on our topo maps, is what we're using as reference here, a backwater condition occurs and you start to get water backing up through South Water Street into that wetland area there where the two branches come together, and then back through the pipe underneath 91 and behind the wastewater treatment plant. So the Little League field seems to be right now, from a local perspective, where a lot of that flood storage occurs. Other things we looked at was possibly looking at shared parking on other, for future development. These are future development things that were sort of thrown out there. We do have a couple places where there's not enough parking downtown, and doing some either shared parking or encouraging shared parking as part of the overall final zoning regulation might be something that you might want to consider. We might end up potentially, I don't know, a municipal parking lot maybe. Who knows? These are pie in the sky things. Okay? These are not defined at this point. These are things that people have asked us about that we're going to be considering in the next phase. Some additional parking on South Water Street to connect to trails and for the recreation uses. Right now, it's an informal parking area and it works up to a point, and then it gets busy. So we just want to keep people from parking on South Water Street. Extending sidewalks to Route 5 via Main Street and Bridge Street, just to make sure that there's a way to set that up. And associated with that also is look at Route 5 as a gateway moment as it comes into on Main Street, on Bridge Street, and on South Water Street, as to how that might work to announce the fact that Warehouse Point is here. Especially when you're on Route 5, you really don't know where any of the villages are. So just to use that as a potential gateway option.
So sidewalks, could you just repeat that?
Sidewalks and
Considering sidewalks to go on to Route 5?
Well, we're just trying to get to Route 5. I think that there's some discussion. At the moment, the Route 5 study is looking at a complete streets elements on Route 5. Not every part of Route 5 would be suitable, but we're just looking to try and get some loops for Route 5 into Warehouse Point type elements. So that, if somebody were to be at the casino, for example, they could walk to Warehouse Point. Right now, they can't. It's tricky.
And dangerous.
Yeah.
Yep. One of the things that we looked about was the Dean Avenue neighborhood. Part of the original Plan of Conservation and Development study looked at Dean Avenue as a sort of a model for residential growth. Owner-occupied. One of the things that we discovered over time on the Dean Avenue neighborhood, everyone likes it, it's delightful, but it doesn't have enough parking. So it has to be, if we're using that as a model for future development, we've got to look at additional parking. Developing potential river access on North Water Street. The South Water Street side is a little too steep, but there's potential access on North Water Street. We were looking at who owns that property along that area. A lot of it is owned by CLMP and a couple other utilities, which is interesting. So we would give it we'll follow up and see if there's something.
Doesn't that drop off pretty suddenly also
A little bit less than what happens
in South
on
Water?
South Water Street. Yep.
Is that higher in elevation than South Water Street?
No, it's lower.
It's lower.
It's lower. Yep. Yeah. Because on Sunday, for example, the water, which was still within the flood area on South Water Street, or it came in, it was probably not much further than maybe 20 feet from North Water Street. It was in there.
That close to the
It was
road?
that close to the road. Yeah. You know,
The road
maybe-
is elevated there though, isn't it?
It is still elevated, but it is still, I think, I don't have the plan in front of me, but I think it sits closer to 26 or 28 as opposed to South Water Street, which is 30, except for under 91 where it's at 28. You might want to think of a way in which to have access and maybe control more of the blue ditch. I don't know if we want to consider some easements or look at how the stormwater would work in that area, since it goes from private property to pipes under the road right of way. So there's some discussion, longer term discussion might be of interest there. There's a couple of houses on South Water Street that have their houses are elevated and their backyards regularly hold water. I don't know, we'll look at whether or not we can maybe pop some drains in and see if we can make some connections to stormwater that might enable us to address some of those particular issues that are specific to the stormwater. They're not river related, they're watershed related. We talked a while ago about coordinating with FEMA to take advantage of programs that are available to the town potentially to purchase flood-prone properties. So we'll follow up on that information and get a better idea of how those programs work. Just as perspective, this was a map that we put together for this. Is why is this project important? I mean, we've been doing it for a while, but just remind everyone what's going on. You have the casino here, potentially at Route 5. You've got a future train station in Windsor Locks, and sandwiched in between there is Warehouse Point. So things are going to happen, and this is part of the reason why we're looking at this. It makes it sort of, puts a little bit into perspective. What's next? So at this point, we'll be putting together a workshop to get some public input, look at the existing conditions, the questions sort of that we're, and it's still in flux at the moment, but the questions that we're looking to have answered are what stormwater related issues have you experienced in Warehouse Point? Are you aware of where the flood limits are and how they might affect your property? Is there something on your property that would benefit from relating to the stormwater? So, have you ever had a claim for flood damage? What was the process like? Would you do it again? Just sort of get some hands-on personal experience. What does Warehouse Point need in order to be vibrant and successful in people's opinions? And I would come to Warehouse Point if it had, everyone has a different answer to that question. But that's pretty much sort of where we're headed at the moment in terms of the first workshop, which will probably be at the beginning of June at this point.
Where will you conduct that workshop?
At the moment, we're thinking of doing it at the church again, like we did last time. The pastor was very generous
Okay.
with the
I think that pastor is, or that priest has since left.
okay.
But I'm sure they'd be
Yeah.
amenable to doing it, so.
We'll be contacting them shortly and just to see, if that's, but it's nice to be down in Warehouse Point in order to have it, because then we put the flyers out and let people know what's going on.
I don't know how big the rooms are, the meeting rooms at the library.
Oh, no, this
Oh,
is
they were
3
too
times its
small.
size.
Oh,
So they used the rectory, or not the rectory, the parish hall at St. John's last time, that could hold 100 and.
Yeah, it was at least this big.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, all of that.
Yep. So with the public input, the other things that we're looking at is look at a variety of development plans, some site plans for the various different properties of interest, what's out there, and coordinate with those property owners to see what we might do. What we're looking for is a description of, okay, what really is the impervious surface cover likely to be on these properties? I'm not making a judgment with respect to how big the building would be or something like that, but if we say, okay, if we did an addition on 12 houses, how much more impervious surface would that be? For example, if the Geisler's Plaza wants to add on or do something different, what would that be? If we have that property up on Bridge Street, up at the top of the hill, if that gets developed, what is that likely to generate in terms of the development and impervious surface? So that we can then model what the proposed conditions would be and see if there's going to be a problem.
Will your study eventually make recommendations on reuse? For example, if there are residential properties, would you be recommending that be changed to?
Well, I can see, for example, the properties between South Water Street, between Bridge Street and School Street. Some of those properties, you know, what would happen to them next? I see those as a potential change of use, what that would actually mean if we had to actually take those buildings and elevate them above the 1 foot above the base flood elevation. What would that be? What would that look like?
Then the question, of course, would be, if you're going to do something like that, is it advisable to change it from residential to small shops and things like that? It would tend to bring people into the center of where I was pointing.
Right, and any of those kind of use, that sort of feedback is what we're looking for next. Yep.
And will you then try to put that into a
But we'll try and put that into a site plan, and then with that, we would also then take those site plans and translate them into a warehouse point zone,
okay.
so that then those issues will already be accommodated within the zoning.
Yep.
Try to avoid special permits, have it meet by right, you know, elements, so that it's a much faster process to go through. The other thing that happens is with the stormwater study that we're doing, that those stormwater recommendations will be integrated into the regulation as well, so that applicant coming in will know that in this particular area, this is the base flood elevation, this is what you need to do for stormwater improvements, and they don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. So that should help move things along quite a bit.
Your opinion at this point, would something have to be done to the blue ditch in order to make that property in there more usable?
I think we have combinations of things at this point, you know, sort of, well, I'm going to call cosmetic improvements, and then look at something in a bigger, I need to run the model in terms of the increased impervious surface, because I suspect if we took all of Warehouse Point and we made it 90% impervious, which it won't ever actually be, then that's going to trigger problems. So it really just depends on, you know, I don't like to unnecessarily scare people or be the prophet of the apocalypse. I like to be something that's much more realistic. So once we know what that is, we might look at regulations that say, okay, this is good, but you need to have some subsurface water quality improvements. You need to either daylight pipes or not pipes. I mean, it's really going to be fairly specific and not blanket, because we know so much about the watershed that we're able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you go back one slide? So what, maybe I'm not drawing the distinction, but what is the difference between the public feedback on, that we're looking to solicit in this project in comparison to the public input that was solicited in the POCD, asking many of those same points?
Right, and I think that's a great question. What we're doing is we're working off of those same points, and there was not, I would have to say that when it came to especially the last two, we got 30% consensus. We were not at what you like to have is like a 60 or 70% consensus. So there's some more visuals that are being done in terms of style and areas where there might be development that would be part of this, so that we're working off of, for example, if you remember, there was one particular slide that everyone hated. Okay. That's good, because now I know that's not what we're talking about, all right? But we did not, on the ones that people did like, we didn't reach what I would consider a clear consensus that would enable us to start writing a regulation that would reflect those styles. So we'll start from where we left off, take those things that we learned from there, and keep moving.
Okay, so it's not as though we're reinventing the wheel. There actually is some progress
Yes,
be made here?
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, like, simple thing, I don't need to reinvent the fact that in that past thing we were talking about, did we want parking on Bridge Street or not want parking on Bridge Street? That was one area where we had 75% consensus. Nobody wanted to see parking on Bridge Street. So I don't need to reinvent that. If I was starting from scratch, I would have that conversation again, and that would be a waste of time.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question, thank you. Once we get the public input results, then we're really going to sit down, we have a map that we call issues and constraints, and look at specifics. Like, for example, planning and zoning asked, well, is a flood wall feasible? Okay, I don't know the answer to that yet, but that's the kind of question that we'll look at for what will be the last phase of this. Is what would that mean? Is it really going to work? That sort of thing. Where would it end up? I think physically the answer is no, just because of the way the river works up into Enfield. So we have to stop at that line. You know, those are the kinds of things. You know, what can we do? What can't we do? What recommendations? So we'll be looking at alternatives, and we'll look at lots of different pieces that come into that. And
Once you've done that, you separated the town from the river, however.
right, correct.
And that happened in Hartford.
Yeah.
And people have said for years that that was a big hurt.
Yeah.
If Hartford no longer, for a long time, did not go down the river until they put in that new plaza down there.
Right, 8 years later.
Riverwalk.
Yep, and Riverwalk, yeah. No, and there are consequences to all of these things. You know, because once you do that, then is that actually going to have a greater impact on the drainage that's running through the blue ditch so that it actually stops the water from getting out as quick as it's currently doing? Those are the kinds of what ifs questions that will be accumulating, and then go through all the different ideas as part of the last phase.
When the last public session was held on that, how many people attended that? Any idea?
Oh, let's go through 100.
Oh, there was?
This is very fun.
Okay, so that's
It was a
good.
very, very well attended.
Okay.
Yep.
I think the Planning and Zoning Office sent out flyers or invitations to affected residents.
I
which
think that's
ended up
correct, and we
with-
have that list again, and we also have a budget for that, so that should work out fine.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yep.
Good job, very thorough.
What's that now?
That was also, the roundabout was big news in Windsor BOS at the time. If I
Right,
remember-
yeah.
If I remember correctly, that was
That's correct.
a
That
big
was
part of the
yeah,
discussion.
It was.
That nobody wanted to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, and that, and, you know, again, you move on, you know, so that's it. So once we have the workshop, then we'll do the what-if scenarios, and then we'll have a second public workshop in the fall, and a final report that is due in December. So that's where we're at. So we're about a third of the way through. This is the main bulk of because it's all the background information. The next piece is, it won't resemble the 5 inches from before. So that's pretty much where we're at. Be happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 7, communication. Is there any communications? I don't have any. All right. Item number 8, public participation. Is there any public? Paul?
Yes, Paul Anderson, 89 Main Street. An official announcement tonight that within the next 10 days, 2 weeks, the East Windsor Chamber of Commerce will be having their office in the Broadbrook Library.
Wow.
So we will probably be open 6 days a week.
Okay.
Where are they going to set up?
They only need a desk. So we're working it all out.
All right.
And Paul, that you will bring Wi-Fi to the building, you said?
We're going to pay for internet and anything else. There'll be no cost to the library. Any expenses that occur, they'll pay for it.
I think this is kind of a public interest. Are they paying rent?
No, We will be getting our membership free. We'll be getting internet and any other cost. And Mr. Richards is going to learn how to be a librarian. So we're going to be fully operational for 6 days a week and potentially 7.
Good.
Okay, other public participation. Right? Hearing none. There's no board and commission resignations and appointment. We'll go on to unfinished business. And the first thing we'll go through is the charter revision, discussion of that. And I do have something I can bring up. What I did is I went to the Connecticut State statutes, and I got a list of things that you have to do when you're making a charter revision. And so I'll read first 3 paragraphs, and then we can talk about where we are. The commission shall hold at least 2 public hearings on the proposed charter amendments or home rule ordinance amendments, one prior to beginning any substantive work on such charter amendments or home rule ordinance amendments, and another one after the draft report draft report to the appointing authority has been completed, but not submitted. After the hearing, the commission may amend such report. And that's where we are now. They had the public hearing. They're going back to amend the report. And then we'll go on to Part B, second paragraph. It says, the commission shall submit its draft report, including the proposed charter amendments or home rule ordinance amendments, to the town clerk of the municipality, who shall transmit such a report to the appointing authority, and that's the Board of Selectmen. So that's the next step. They'll have to give the report to the town clerk will have to give it to us. The appointing authority shall hold at least 1 public hearing on the draft report and shall hold its last hearing not later than 45 days after submission of the draft report to such clerk. No later than 15 days after its last hearing, the appointing authority shall make recommendations to the commission for such changes in the draft report as it deems desirable. So that's our next step, is to make changes to that report after we receive it from the town clerk. And then, once we do that, or about that, it says if the appointing authority makes no recommendations for changes in the draft report to the commission within 15 days, the report of the commission shall be final and the appointing authority shall act on such report. If the appointing authority makes recommendations for changing in the draft report to the commission shall confer with the appointing authority concerning any such recommendations and may amend any provisions of the charter amendments or home rule amendments in accordance with such recommendations, or the commission may reject the recommendations. In either case, the commission shall make its final report to the appointing authority no later than 30 days after receiving such recommendations. And then it goes on, no later than 15 days after receiving the appointing authority may, by a majority vote of its entire membership, shall either approve the proposed charter amendments or reject the same or separate positions thereof. So when they present their final report after we go through it, can either accept the whole report, reject the whole report, or accept parts of it. And then it will go on to be voted on. So that's basically what we have ahead of us with the charter revision. Any questions?
What was the statutory reference?
It's 7-91, and actually I have copies here, so I'll pass it down.
Do we have a sense of when it will be before us?
Yeah, I think it'll be before us probably in a week or so.
And when it comes to us, would it be possible to get it in a red line version to identify the changes?
I'm not sure about a red line, but I think it will, I'll ask about that, but you'll have the changes crossed out, or the parts that are being deleted, you know, a line through them. and
That's,
and
yeah,
the
that's
new
a track
ones.
change, it's a red line.
Well, it won't be red, perhaps.
It's just nomenclature. It's,
Okay.
I want to be able to see what was changed.
Yeah, it'll be that way.
The next meeting is Monday night. It's going to be over in Town Hall Annex.
Although, and that may be true.
I was told that today, I don't know.
Okay, all right.
Bill, the meeting's at the Town Hall Annex
Yes.
on Monday,
Next Monday, it's the
not the
6th.
Scott Hall.
No.
I think this room might be open Monday, but it's probably too late to change it anyway. I'm not sure. Okay.
No, you can notice a meeting within 24 hours.
I think you're right. So this is a special meeting, yeah,
But John sent out emails to everybody that it was
in the annex.
at the annex.
Okay,
Annex conference room.
okay. Anything else about the charter revision? Okay, then we'll go on to unfinished business, the casino. And I have a couple things about the casino too. And first thing is, I'll read a little of an article, and probably you all know that the casino gave $1 million to the DCP, Department of Consumer Protection, so I'll read a little about that. But that's a big thing. When they give $1 million to the state, you know things are moving. That's a very significant sign. So this is what the article, the beginning of the article says. The tribal nations, operators of Mohegan, Sun, and Foxwood Resort casinos have taken their first step in financing a jointly run $300 million casino in East Windsor. The Mohegan and Mashantucket tribes, operating under the MMCT venture, on Friday said it sent $1 million to the State Department of Consumer Protection to offset the state's regulatory costs of the project. This measure was required in ongoing process to finance a building and new gaming entertainment complex known as Tribal Winds Casino. So that's basically it. So that's a good sign.
That is.
It's a good start.
In addition to that, they have knocked down the 4 home houses over on Route 5 and are doing some grading over there.
Yeah, I
So
drove by.
they're actively doing some work beside.
Yes, so that's good. The other thing I wanted to bring up is, I think we have to start thinking about that ordinance that we passed. It has to go to a town meeting, and what I think I'd like to do is take it to a referendum. And the referendum, I'm thinking about it, I believe it's, if there is a third budget referendum, we could have it during that. I think it's June 12th is would be the date of the third budget referendum. So, and we might have to pass it again, because I noticed when I looked at a copy of it, it says the following ordinance was adopted at a special town meeting duly warned and held on blank 2018, because we passed it in November. We should change it to 2019. So might have to vote on it again.
Now, this would be to just simply establish a bank account.
Yeah, and I have copies of that too. I can pass that
Now,
on.
back when we talked about it in October or
November, I think.
whatever it was.
Yeah.
I was asked if I would put together a draft of a ordinance for the next one. And I did that, and I don't know where that is these days. But, you know, that should be looked at also sometime soon.
Yeah, I think we got to pass this one first, though. I think if this one doesn't pass, then that changes the whole ball game. So that's what our first task is to see if the residents want to pass this ordinance or not, so.
Now, if the budget passes before a third referendum, would you hold a separate referendum?
Yes, I would,
In June?
in June, and June 12th. That's what I think the target would be.
Hey, Bob,
Yes.
you know, the most important thing here is to figure out who's gonna run the boat. You gotta figure out who is going to manage the money. That's. what
Yeah, I think that's what Andy was saying too.
Right, and that's what we've talked about, and that's gotta get done.
Yeah.
Because that money's gonna be coming pretty quick. So we gotta figure out who's gonna run this boat, who's gonna manage that money, and who's gonna say where that money's gonna go. And that's gotta get done, right away.
That's
You know,
the
we
second.
keep putting things off around here, you know, it's like Washington DC, you know? Let's get moving on things here.
Okay, any more discussion?
No.
All right. Okay, the beautification committee, I don't have anybody, didn't present me with any applications yet, so we're still working on getting some members. But,
Shelley, do you have any interest in people who want to join this?
I do, and I just need to reach out to them.
and that's what I do, I haven't reached
I'll
out.
do that over the weekend.
I haven't reached out to the garden committee, and
Yeah.
the cleanup group, one's on vacation, and one, we're having a conversation, so we're starting to
Okay.
recruit members.
Is there much interest in it, or?
Yeah.
There is, good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if we can get 5 members, that's great, that's a good start.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, they're very interested.
Okay, and the next agenda item is discussion of the animal control shelter. And Andy's going to lead that, he's done a lot of research.
Andy, do you think I should give just a preview of how we started to do this?
What's that?
Should I talk about the preview of why we started to look at this?
I was going to do that, Charlie.
Okay, go ahead.
Why don't you start off, go ahead.
Okay. You know, how we got into this about having a change perhaps in the animal control shelter that we currently have was that I was at a meeting with the police chief and the deputy chief, and one or both of them made comments that they had to have officers go to feed the dogs because the part-time animal control officer was not in, and I kind of thought about that. Geez, it seems like, you know, having people so highly skilled, you know, doing that may not be the best resource to be using, but then I kind of got that out of my head. And shortly afterwards, I was on Sullivan Avenue in South Windsor and stopped in traffic, and there's a building, there was formerly a fire station, and they had moved out of there some time ago to a new place further down Sullivan Avenue, and the sign said Tyler Regional Animal Control Center. And so I thought, well, you know, what does that mean? So I did a little research on it, and the police chief that was in South Windsor at the time, his name was Tyler, and he came from the West Coast to work here, and in the West Coast where he came from, I guess everything was regionalized there, and that he thought that, you know, they needed to get something fixed there, and they had an estimate to build a new animal control center. It was $4.5 million. So that wasn't going to really fly, and then that building was being looked at, and then they converted it into I put his name on it. He had since died and so forth, but so I had met with the police chief in South Windsor to try to get a better understanding of everything, and then following that, Andy and I kind of got together, and Andy's put together a very thorough document here as to what we currently do and what the opportunity is and what that cost is going to be.
Shelley? Another thing that influenced this look-see was the fact that there was a capital request for $62,000 for capital improvement in our facility. I talked to Roger Hart and to Chris Lindstrom, who are both deputy chiefs. Ours, of course, Hart in East Windsor and Lindstrom in South Windsor, Kim Scavata to get data, and the Trek staff, the Tyler staff. Charlie and I made 2 or 3 trips down there to talk to people to try to get the facts as they know them, so that we could put it into something that is understandable and states the facts as best we can. And let me just go through. The Tyler facility, as Charlie said, is an old firehouse on Sullivan Avenue. It's a good building. It's a good, substantial brick building. They did $500,000 of renovation in it. The facility is a consortium. It's shared by Manchester, East Hartford, and South Windsor. They have an annual budget of $53,400, and it's apportioned through a factor called pound days. Anytime a dog enters a facility and is there for any period of time at all, that's a pound day. And so each town is apportioned their part of the cost for running that facility based upon the number of pound days they have, how many dogs they have there for how many days. It's a great facility. And I'm not knocking ours. Ours has been adequate. It's done the job for a long time. But if you compare the two, we had a little dog that was the greatest thing we ever had. Pat and I loved him. He was with us for 17 and a half years. That guy got lost. I let him get lost in South Windsor, not East Windsor. That facility down there is a really nice facility. I'll describe it, and I have some pictures, and I have some copies of the point paper that I put together that you're welcome to have. But the bottom line is it has 38 dog enclosures. The dog enclosures are centered in the building so that they have no dog enclosure that's exposed to an outside wall. The building is heated and air conditioned. It's a gas-fired system. There's a 6-foot walkway around the outside of it. The animal enclosures are raised above the floor by about a foot, foot and a half. The bed for the enclosures are an impervious material that do not absorb urine or feces, and they do not smell. They're easy to clean. When an animal enclosure is being cleaned, what they do is they open a large door in the back, and there's an adjacent white enclosure behind it, and the dog is released into that one. They clean their enclosure, and then they bring the dog back in again. Now, there are occasions where that can't be done because the place is filled. In spite of the fact it has 38 enclosures, the young lady who is one of the animal control people in South Windsor said they sometimes get close to being maxed out in that facility. They have enough traffic there so that they have a good adoption rate. They have a Saturday from 9 to 3 adoption period every week. And they have a fair amount of traffic that goes through there. And they have a separate adoption room, which is kind of neat, because you can take a dog that you have interest in, and you can bring it into that adoption area. It's got chairs in it. It has an area where the dog can certainly be free. Doesn't have to be harnessed or leashed, and and you can try to understand if that's a dog you like or not. They also have a relationship with other animal care facilities in the state, um, that where if a dog is held for a prolonged period of time, and they would like to give it more opportunity, they can take it to other facilities on loan or on a permanent basis to get the dog home. In talking to Roger, he was saying that there's not a lot of traffic at our facility for adoption. There was one time when they had an animal for 60 days, and he gave me kind of a neat phrase. He said, "We have a don't kill philosophy," which I think is great. The town is patient. They're willing to pay for keeping a dog for as long as it's reasonable to find a home for it, and that's a good thing. The people in South Windsor have the same philosophy. The difference being that they have a high level of traffic, and so the chances of having a dog adopted, I think, is higher. They invited East Windsor to join that consortium, the consortium of South Windsor, Manchester, and East Hartford. Our number of pound days is really very low. I got the number from Roger for 2018. It was 148 pound days, whereas places like,
Just, sorry to interrupt, but just for edification, if you have, today's Thursday, so if you have 3 dogs in our facility just tonight, is that 1 pound day or 3 pound
that's
days?
true.
Okay.
That's true. They invited us to join. We would be a minor partner. For example, Manchester or East Hartford, they're around 3,000 pound days. The cost to us on an annual basis, their estimate by the town of South Windsor is be $2,670 a year to join the consortium, based upon our pound days versus the total pound days there. We would only be something less than 4% of the number of pound days that they have at that facility. They rounded it up to 5 to make it easy for calculation, I guess. In reality, I guess we could negotiate for another 1%. But and if you do that, if you're reasonable about the cost to us of our facility, I believe we could save the town about $10,000 a year in animal shelter costs. And it's because we can do away with things like heat and fuel and some of our manpower, because people in South Windsor will, on a daily basis, care for the animals. They'll clean the cages, they will feed the animals, they'll take them out to an outside area, and I'd like to describe some of that later. It's really, really very nice. Compared to ours, and I'm not knocking ours, it served us well. But our enclosures are something like 5 feet by 3.5 feet. Theirs are 10 feet by 4 feet. Theirs are really well lighted. They have, it's light and bright. The air conditioning system, because of the fact that it's above the bed for the enclosures, are above the ground by a foot and a half, are warm. But whereas our facility, at best, during a winter day, it's a concrete floor. It's going to be cold. It is separated from the outside by a block wall, which is right there with the dogs. Whereas theirs is separated by 6 feet all around, and is above that concrete floor. The Tyler facility is truly superior facility. For anybody who would like to take a look at it, I'd urge you to do it. Chris Lindstrom has been very, very easy to deal with. He reviewed the report, thought it was accurate, thought that it told a story. The only change that he had me make was that I wrote in the original draft that the staff was paid for by the consortium. That's not true. The towns have to pay for their own animal control people. However, the people who do the cleaning and feeding of dogs and taking them out to the outside area and grooming them and bathing them and so on, they are paid for by the consortium. There are 2 of those young ladies, they are part-timers, and they are paid for by the, and the only change that Roger really made, and it was that I had in there that veterinary bills were covered by the consortium, and I had Chris Lindstrom check it, and Roger was right, they are not. It's lumped into a professional services area. Professional services is the veterinary cost. WPCA charges the kennel $380 a year for that service. And when I talked to Roger, he said, you know, we oftentimes overrun the veterinary costs. So when I did my cost trade-off, I didn't bother taking the $380 out of the $1,084. It was in professional services. I just plain forgot about it. In addition to that, Lynn Norton said that with the maintenance, which is mowing some lawn, minimal amount, plowing it, and doing other work around there, that he thought, off the top of his head, that it was maybe $300 or $400 worth of his effort on an annual basis. I put in $200, and I didn't put that into the cost trade-off either. I just simply said, that's breakage. My numbers have got some errors in them, and so therefore, to try to continue to make them conservative, I didn't put that $600 worth of stuff in there. I really do believe that it's the right thing for our town to join the regional consortium. It's a great facility. The animals are really well cared for. The environment is safe and healthy and clean. Cleaner than ours can be. And ours, when I went there, the young police officer let me in, there were no dogs there that particular day. But it's a concrete floor. It has cracks in it. The heating system is a modern heating system. I think Lynn said he put it in 2 years ago. It's a oil-fired circulating, rather forced air, hot air system with a duct up on top that goes down the center aisle, and it diffuses heat into the aisle area, which goes out into the 8 pins. We have 8 pins at our place instead of 38. So my conclusion, and not only did Charlie and I get involved, but Bob did also. He went down and took a look at the facility just so that he would know what it looked like. And I think that we uniformly believe that it's a great deal and it's something we should take advantage of.
Yeah, the thing of having it there is that in that $2,670 number that they gave us, and again, it's based on the dog nights there, that that includes the feed for the dogs, watering, taking care of them, that somebody's there. You know, a lot of the time, we're here, we don't have somebody there a lot of the time. And I said that the officers on the midnight shift, if they're not busy, they stop in there and just kind of check things on the dogs and so forth. And so having more contact with people is really good for the dogs. And seeing that elevated cage that they're in, that is so much more humane than, than being on the floor as they are now.
What is the cage made of? What's the floor made of?
Looks like a plastic.
It's like some kind of plastic that they just wash off, and so they can take that out very easily.
It's also so that the dog, when they're barking, they don't slip or something like that.
My
Yeah.
concern was it being wood, because you can't disinfect wood.
No, it's not. It's a plastic. And, they would take the dog to the vet. They have vets in South Windsor that they have relationships with. Once our animal control officer brings the dog there, there's not a need to go back there unless somebody calls that they want to pick up their dog that got picked up that was roaming, then we'd have to go back. But that's not different than what it is today. They have to go down to Mill Street and do exactly the same thing. They have, in addition to the dogs, they also have a separate area of cages for cats. They also have
And birds and
and
small
bird
animals.
cages and small animals, because sometimes people call.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Birds and cats are the
Yeah,
same room.
yeah, so they've got it laid out well.
Very few birds in there.
They have an area which was the fire chief's office. That's where half of it is where the bird cages are and the cat cages. And then the other part, they have 4 desks there, workstations, for when the animal control officers come in, that they do their reports there. They have internet hookup and everything, so they go right online on their laptops and do whatever it is that they need to do.
We would have a dedicated desk for our animal control people. In addition to that, something that Charlie and I didn't say, it really is important. They have 2 full-time animal control people, and what do they now call them?
Community services.
Community services people that are dedicated to that facility. So they have 1 person on first, 1 person on the second shift. So that facility is manned by a professional for 2 shifts a day.
Yeah. Also, if you could I'm sure most of you envision where this is, and being a fire station previously, that they had big drains in the floor, built in there, and they cleaned those all out and everything when they started in the renovation process, so that when the people that are working there's 2 young ladies that do all of that during the day, cleaning the cages and feeding and so forth, that, they just wash it right down into those big drains that are in the floor, so it's nothing that is of any issue. And the thing that I thought, you probably wouldn't build it like this because you wouldn't maybe think of it or have the money to do it, but that fire station where the fire trucks were parked in there have 2 huge roll-up doors on each end, so they could drive the trucks in and drive them out. Well, on the nice days, they roll those doors up. So those animals, the dogs, get nice fresh air running through there, and it's, big doors, so they got plenty of air. They take them out most every day, weather permitting, to exercise them. They got an area for that, so it's a well-run operation, and for our cost, for the town, I think it's just the right thing to do. Right thing to do for the animals and the right thing to do in terms of cost.
Steve?
From everything we've heard, I think this is a no-brainer. Going to save the town money. And is there a motion here made where we can approve this thing here tonight?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Well, Paul, you want to say something?
Paul Anderson represented the WPCA. Andy, you mentioned WPCA a couple times. I don't understand how that relates.
It's in the professional services, Kim Scavato books it in professional services.
Yes.
And I called the office yesterday and asked what the charge was for that facility. And the young lady said it was $380 a year for the WPCA fee
for that facility.
Sewer
Oh,
charge.
I'm sorry, that's the sewer user fee.
Yeah.
I didn't understand where the WPCA got involved with the dogs. Thank you.
Okay.
The cages at the existing municipal facility in town, are they uniform in size or are they varied?
Once you keep,
They're uniform in size.
They're all
I'd
three,
say-
3.5 by 5?
Yeah.
or
They're much smaller spaces. These are 10 by 4 by 10, and they're big spaces. The ones at our own,
you've seen this, Jason. but
yeah,
that's
animal
what-
control facility.
Yeah, South Windsor, this is what ours look like.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that that's what the Department of Agriculture is asking us to upgrade, is the space available for the dogs?
One argument that I've heard to keep it here is if we ever move it somewhere else and then have to bring it back here, we'd have to spend a great deal of money just to bring it up to the code.
That's true.
But apparently there's a minimum code that we can get away with here if we just do some repairs.
Yeah, if we close it down and then reopen it, we need to comport to the new regulations.
That's true.
And,
She said these
but,
cages are
yeah,
the state regulated size.
4 by 10 is state regulated, yeah.
That's what she said.
And that's actually the commercial kennel size.
Yeah.
Municipalities get a discretion to be slightly smaller, which I never understood, but, you'd think the health and
Yeah.
comfort of the animal shouldn't matter if it's a for-profit or a government-run entity. 3.5 by 5 is nowhere near it. I think it's 8 feet for municipal.
And the bad thing about it also, something that bothered me was the fact that the back wall of each one of those enclosures is exposed to the outside, and it's a block wall, so there's no
They have
insulation.
the guillotine doors, though, right?
And it's got one small guillotine door, which is plastic,
Mhm.
no insulation.
Yeah.
And the concrete is a concrete floor that the dog lays on or stands on.
So according to the existing regulations, the concrete floor is not problematic. It's actually preferred because or that polymer that you were describing, because it's able to be cleaned. One of the things you can't see is anything wood. You can't see like that fake grass stuff.
No, absolutely.
Because you can't ever disinfect it, and something like
Absolutely.
parvovirus can live forever.
Yep.
I think it's a compelling argument, just the photos. But the guillotine door also is not, that's totally kosher under the,
I'm not saying it isn't, all I'm saying is there are differences.
yeah, but the reason for that though is so the dog can go in and out at their leisure,
Yeah.
so to speak.
The outside enclosure is about this, I think that might be 7 feet long, but still 3.5 feet wide. They're equal to the inside.
All right, guys, let's get the
Okay.
job done here. You got a motion?
Yeah.
Hold on, I have a couple more questions.
Okay.
Will we be responsible, in South Windsor, would we be responsible for providing staffing?
Only our own animal control people, they would bring the dogs down there. They would, I'm sure, if there was an adoption activity and someone from town had interest in adopting a dog from town, that our people would have to go and staff that. But the ordinary maintenance of that facility is done by the staff there.
But, so we would still retain within our budget, within our services, at least one, if not more than one part-time animal.
What I did is I left in 1.6.
You left in 1.6 part-time people? I
Yeah.
don't even know how you do 0.6 of a part-time.
I did it by a formula. I asked the people how many hours it takes to handle a dog on a daily basis. They said roughly 3-4 hours. That includes a whole bunch of things, feeding and cleaning and taking the dogs out for a walk, and giving them a bath on some days and so on, like that kind of stuff, okay? So what I did is I took 3 hours, the low side, and I multiplied it by times 148 pound days, and multiplied it times the rate for our people, which is $22.16 for our part-time people, and come up with a number. And I said that that number should be taken away from the $26,000 in salary that we have in our pool, and it turned out to be like about 39% of the salary for our people. We are budgeted for 2 people,
2 part-time people.
yeah, at 29, total of 29 hours. So in effect, I left 1.6 people in there, based on my formula.
What's the total staff hours?
Total.
In your form, the reason I ask is because you're gonna trigger, if you're over, is it 19 or 20 hours, you trigger the ACA?
I would still propose to have 2 people, 2 part-time people on our staff.
Do you imagine that's feasible, Bob?
Right now, we have 2 part-time people, right now we have 1.
1.
But our budget contractual, 33.4 is the budget, 29 hours a week split between the 2.
For 2 people, right, Bob?
Right, so do you, so what are they doing, 14 and a half hours? Will you be able to get 2 people to do 10 hours apiece? Or is it, there comes a problem.
Yeah, that's the problem that we're gonna have eventually, or is it if we whittle that number down, good luck trying to find somebody, we're having a hard time now. So.
Yeah, so, and that's the point I'm trying to get to with Andy, with your formula is, do you have the people who will do it for half of the depreciated hours, or do you have one person who will do it and then trigger additional costs through the ACA? Or other benefits? Where's that trigger? I'm just throwing out there, I'm throwing that out there as a point of caution. I like the proposal that you put together. I think it makes sense. I'm just concerned about the staffing consideration. And I don't want anybody to lose their job.
Are we all done? We got a motion?
Make your motion, Steve.
Right down there.
All right.
Oh, it's tight.
Yeah. We've been working hard on this. Serious business here. Sakes.
That'd be the biggest decision this town has made all year.
It is. All right. I'd like to make a motion to authorize the first selectman to sign all documents and make all necessary arrangements to transfer East Windsor's sheltering of animals from the current East Windsor Animal Control Shelter at 27 Mill Street, Broadbrook, to the Tyler Regional Animal Care Shelter located at 124 Sullivan Avenue in South Windsor, and to ensure that the effective date of the transfer is on or before July 1st, 2019.
Should that also say and authorize the first selectman to sign the agreement?
That's what he led with.
Yeah, it does say that.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I didn't hear it. Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I didn't realize there was an agreement, is it an MOA or an MOU? If there's something in writing, I'd like to read it.
Well, okay. I don't know if I have it here.
I'm not gonna.
Yeah,
I'm
but
saying,
yes, obviously, we would be part of that consortium, so we have
Jason,
to.
you can have mine. Here's the agreement that they have with the town of Manchester and the
Where'd
rest
you
of
get this? How am I the only one without this stuff?
them. That's the agreement all the towns signed.
Do you want a copy of this thing?
Sure.
You want other copies? If you're going to see Roger Hart, could you give him a copy of the thing? He has a copy already, but it's not, doesn't have his corrections in it. Does anybody else want a copy? I've got a bunch of them here.
I got a question while we got a moment. We have any idea what we use that building for? The old building?
Storage.
Who cares?
That's fine.
It could be storage. It's
No,
not,
I'm just curious.
it's not a bad building. You knock out some inside block walls that have, anchor fence above. It would leave you with, my guess, something that's probably 30 or 40 feet long and maybe 25 feet wide.
It will become an attractive nuisance, though.
Hmm?
That will certainly become an attractive nuisance.
Yep,
It could be.
right off the road.
Yeah, turn it into an efficiency department.
Can I ask a question about all?
Sure.
Andy mentioned that sometimes they're very close to capacity.
He did.
Is there something in the agreement that says what dog gets accepted and what dog doesn't if they're at capacity?
I don't know. And I'll just say that I went there too, and there might have been 3 big dogs and 3 little dogs, so there were 6 dogs out of 38. So when I went there, it was nowhere near capacity. It would be unusual, I think, to...
Chris Lindstrom told me that when they reach capacity, and he said it really doesn't happen very often. He said in the several years it's been open, it's only happened like once or twice. But he said what they do is they will farm a dog out to a shelter on a temporary basis, and as soon as an enclosure clears, they'll bring it back again.
So there's no danger of us being stuck with a dog that there's no room for?
They'll accept the dog, and then they'll find a temporary
Right. Well, that's what I'm
location.
checking. Like
Yeah, they'll find a temporary location for
The
it.
animal control officer picks up a dog, I don't want him to like have to keep him in his car because it's a full shelter.
Not like I don't think.
Well, I think it should be sure.
Well, if you take the farm that you use, there's from East Hartford in here, that's 52 cages every day that are already full. And I haven't calculated in Manchester because I didn't catch that number. So right now there's 8 cages available.
All right, we need to vote on this.
You satisfied, Jason?
I've got like 4 pages to go. It was the only one I didn't get a copy.
What'd you find in there? Agreement.
Is there any provision in there if there's any capital improvements, how, like, what if they need a new roof?
There is a provision for that. That's a very good question. It's actually on page 3. The physical plant at the facility shall be operated and maintained by the town of South Windsor. In addition, the town of South Windsor will be responsible for overseeing future capital projects and major repairs as funded through the capital account described in Exhibit blank. The town of South Windsor will annually evaluate the facility and any equipment acquired under this agreement and make recommendations to the governing board, which comprises of the municipal leaders from participating towns, regarding necessary maintenance, capital projects, and major repairs.
As an example, in the budget that I had gotten a copy of, their budget to run that place for the $53,400, they have a line item in there, $8,000 for capital. And they don't take it away if it's not used, it continues to grow. And they just finished putting a new roof on that facility, and there was no charge to any of the towns because they had the money in capital. So it's part of the budget is that they have capital in there.
But if there was something major, I think what Jason just read means that we could be charged back at some point in the future, nothing.
Probably not really clear. I hate to see us in a Scout Hall environment again where we're not sure what's covered by South Windsor versus what's covered by the
By the
municipalities.
consortium.
Take care of
It's
it.
covered by
You
the,
mean the written agreement?
Yeah, exactly. Because at some point, there's a line there, right? What's the South Windsor going to do versus what's the consortium going to do? And if that line isn't crystal clear, then
Well, the consortium would pay for any repairs. They had to replace the hot water heater, they told me last year. So that was a capital expense that they had money in there for. So, you know, I can't see something in that place costing an awful lot of money.
They just in April finished a brand-new roof for that building, and had money in the capital, but, till to do that. And I asked Lindstrom whether they had any major plans for capital improvements, and he said no, that they did not. That the building is in good shape, doesn't have any need for major capital improvement.
Okay, we done beating it to death, guys? You ready to vote?
I'm not ready yet.
And we're done with our $1
Andy,
million dog
Andy.
pound, East Windsor.
Mr. Hoffman?
Could I just ask you? I'm sorry.
Sure. Barbara Pasano.
Thank you.
Sure. Andy, the 148 pound days that you calculated, what period of time was that? Like,
It was calendar 2018. That's the number that Roger marked out for me.
do we have any idea if that's normal, or if that's high, or if that's low? 'Cause if you
I
just
asked, I asked Roger that, and he said pretty typical. So I guess the answer is, that's the kind of number that we normally run. And as I said before, I can give you the numbers. Right now, the number of days at pound day, the facility total pound days for all four of us, including Manchester, South Windsor, East Hartford, and East Windsor, would be 4,443 pound days. So that you can see that we're a pretty small part of it.
we're a pretty small part of it based on the numbers that we have for 1 year.
Yes.
Okay, that,
But it's also, I had gotten a report from the Department of Agriculture that on a monthly basis, every town submits a report to the Department of Ag, who regulates the shelters, and it was for 17, 18, and they were pretty much the same. I never knew until looking at this that it's actually seasonal when you get more dogs that run away and stuff. I thought that was interesting, but it's not gonna change much.
I'm not in disagreement that it sounds like a great decision. I just want to make sure that we're basing it on good information.
It came from the Department of Agriculture.
No, not what you said. I'm saying with the 144 pound days and.
148.
Yeah, that's what the town of East Windsor reported from their animal shelter to the Department of Agriculture.
And the point is, it's just 1 year, so there's.
Well, the last year was what we
We're not
asked
looking
for.
at numerous years, so to get a clearer picture of what the
Right.
trend is really like.
But I did ask Roger whether it was typical, and he said yes, it was.
Andy, did they say where the non-lapsing capital account referenced in the exhibit comes
Yeah.
from? There is a creation by the governing board of a non-lapsing capital fund. Do you know where that's funded, or how that's funded?
Yeah, by a line item that's in the budget, that
No.
you pay your 5% what we get.
I think that's separate.
It comes from the contribution of the participating towns each year.
So they lump sum us, and then this governing board that's been established appropriates versus operating expenses versus capital fund.
Yeah, they
Give that to Jason.
appropriate.
There's more.
This is, see where it is in there? Yeah. That's,
So it's part of the dues.
It's part of the fee that they charge.
Oh, that's the formula.
I got one question.
Sure.
Bill Lowe's, Mowers Road. How many times a year does an officer have to go down there and quiet a dog because a neighbor complains? Is that included in your list with Roger Hart?
Say again, I'm sorry.
How many times a year does an officer, police officer that's on duty, have to go down there and quiet dogs because a neighbor complains?
I don't know the answer to that. I really don't know. The facility on Sullivan is kind of separated from the neighborhood.
I know that one.
Yeah, I
Just come
don't
down
know the
here,
answer to that.
They get calls down here.
I don't know the answer to that.
Talk about Mill Street.
Yeah,
We reduce that cost.
I wasn't smart enough to ask that question. He tries hard, he said, to keep the police officers out of the dog pound business. He said it's not their specialty, that if it's necessary, they do step in and help, but he would prefer to have the animal control people take care of it. They're trained to do it, that's their job, and he would rather have them do it than get an officer involved in something like that.
Did your, when you were putting together your number, your budgetary analysis, and you talked about the assessment based on pound days, did you also figure in separately the administrative fee? There's a separate fee beyond just the pound days.
But the pound days is the basis on which they charge us.
So there's the pound days formula, which is the annual expenses. That's what you talked about with the running of the ship.
Yeah.
And then in number 4 of the agreement, it talks about administrative fees in addition to the annual budget. Each year, the governing board will set an annual administrative fee to be paid by the participating municipalities designated as the administrative manager of the facility. The administrative fee will be shared equally among the other participating municipalities. The administrative fee will be in addition to a participating municipality's share of the annual expenses.
I did not include that.
Do we know what it is?
I don't.
So we're going to pay 5% of the dog, but we're going to pay a quarter of that fee.
You got it.
Right, we're going to pay 5% of the operating costs and a quarter of the administrative fees.
Yes.
Do we
I
know?
don't think you pay a quarter, but I think you pay a percentage of it.
No, shall be paid equally.
Says equal.
And it's not proportional. That's currently split 3 ways, it would be split 4 ways. It's the operational costs that are split pro rata.
So we're in essence, you're subsidizing the other towns.
What?
So we're basically going to subsidize the other 3 towns.
Pretty much, they're gonna get a break.
Guess it kind of depends on how big that cost is.
Do we have anything that indicates what that would be?
I have to.
What's your delta savings?
$10,000.
Is it? Do you know that that's a savings? In consideration of the administrative fee, do you know that that's a savings?
The chief in South Windsor told me that there's a page in that thing that gives the math on how we got what we're gonna pay. Did you see that? Is that what that is?
I'm hoping it's this, we don't want to go through this whole thing.
Yeah. And he said that's all that was there. He said we wouldn't pay anything else. 2670.
So what he said and what the agreement says are not the same.
That's the unwritten agreement.
What?
That's the unwritten agreement.
Is that a joke?
No, that's actually what I received from Deputy Lindstrom, South Windsor.
An unwritten agreement?
Well, that's exactly what he spoke to. Let me get my phone to turn.
So we have until, we can enter into this agreement before the start of the fiscal year, right? Can you find out what that administrative fee is? That's the,
Call them one.
yeah. So I have now read the entire, first, I'd like you to find out 2 pieces of information. Is this agreement dated November 26, 2012, the current one? And what is the administrative fee referenced in section 4 of the exhibit?
I can answer the question. That is the current one that both towns, all 3 towns had signed.
It is the most current one?
Yes.
Okay. If you could just let me know what the administrative fee is. Other than that, this is a good proposal.
Do you want to,
We want to table it until the next meeting.
all right, is that everybody in agreement with that? We'll table it to the next
Why
meeting?
don't we agree or vote on the motion, and why don't I get the fee? We can still go back and change that.
That's true. We could approve and then if you can get the information,
Pending the information.
and if we don't like it, we can change the motion at the next meeting. We can read.
So if we wait until the next meeting and have that information, I'm a yes vote. If we vote tonight without that information, I'm a no.
Okay. Sounds fair enough. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Well, wait.
Aye.
Do we want to take and enforce Jason to have a no vote because he doesn't understand that one issue? That's going to be a small number.
Well, the answer to your question is, I think I have enough faith in the people sitting at this board, so if there's a valid reason to change this, we will do it. I have confidence in
We'll do
us.
that.
Jason doesn't, and that's okay.
That's not at all what I said.
Well, that's what I said. I have a mind also.
Well, maybe you could answer those questions.
And now people are yelling out from the audience. I should not have let it go this far. I apologize for that. All right, so let's vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Okay.
I'll email you the number tomorrow.
All right, now we'll go on to item 11B, discussion of, 11A, a discussion of Board of Finance supplementary appropriation.
Can I just interrupt you? Do you guys have the printed copy from our minutes so that you know all of the stuff? Did
Yes.
you guys get that in your packet?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, awesome. Just making sure.
Yeah. So, at the last Board of Finance meeting, there was, what you have in your packet, there were a lot of supplementary appropriations made, there was one lump sum appropriation made for $657,100 total. And there's a list of them, and you can see what the list is. And it's our charge to move it to a town meeting.
Before you do that, I don't want to do that. I want the detail of, I spent $20 or something like that putting together a story for $10,000.
Yeah.
We're talking about we're talking about near $750,000. I want backup for this stuff.
Yeah, and I thought about that too, and what I have here is the CIP folder with and a lot of this are CIP projects that weren't approved, or the money wasn't sufficient to cover all the CIP projects. So we went to the general fund, the fund balance, and took the surplus there that was above 20%, and the Board of Finance allocated that money to different items. But I also know that when we were at a town meeting, the town people present have a lot of questions. They want to know details about what the appropriations are. So what I'm going to do is go through this in detail and see if there's enough information about the CIP projects too, so we can be informative to the residents who attend the town meeting. And I'll send it out to you guys. And if you want more information, let me know and I'll get it. Now, all these projects are not in CIP.
You know, 2 or 3 meetings ago, Kathy came in and gave us a really good presentation on CIP with, you know, with the detail that she had. I would like to see that in some printed form, so I can sit down and look at it and decide for myself whether I have additional questions or not.
Yeah, Kathy?
As far as the CIP projects go, you have all that information that I gave you, both in the letter that I gave you, presenting the CIP projects, as well as in your CIP books.
Okay, and that's what I'm going to make sure everybody has that.
And Bob, I also made sure that everybody, like Public Works, Board of Ed, and the police and town is here for any questions. So if there's something that wasn't on the capital, but most of it is, it's already described, but they're here if there are any questions.
Well, we haven't studied it, so we don't have it. No, I think what I'd like to do is, and Kathy's here, so if I know there's a lot of, or some, Board of Education things here, like, and maybe you could talk a little about them now. It says $38,000 for IT in the Board of Education.
Yes, that covers some smart boards.
Smart boards.
The high school, 3 smart boards. The high school Mac lab, which is required for some of our music. And a laptop cart to enhance the availability of laptops to the 2nd grade.
Okay. I think what I'd ask you to do is send me an email with that information in it, like cost of the laptop. Oh,
It's all here. We have it.
all here.
it's all there.
Right here, it's all written out.
The one that,
Where? Why is it here?
Copies we made.
Do you have a copy of that, Jason?
I'm not sure that I do, actually. I'm looking at this. Thank you.
Well, this is what I said. I said it was $38,000 for.
Or give it to me, I'll make some copies for you.
No, I don't. I think we have that copy. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Oh, this, I'm sorry, this is in the minutes. This is a page out of the minutes.
This is the page out of the minutes.
Yeah.
And it says here, IT group. I just read that. It said IT. The Board of Education wants $38,000.
I think they just mean because there's notes next to it, Bob, just next to that one that we have put. You see, I think that's all they meant. That there were notes. That's, I think.
Oh, 3 smart board. Oh, that little bit of notes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
They are. Broke it down.
Okay. 3 smart boards, $20.
No, Bob, because this is so much money, you know, so we should have a separate meeting to go through this.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that I want to review all this information and meet at the next meeting, make sure we have all the information that's necessary.
One thing can I just bring up, do you have the fund balance policy?
Yes.
Okay, because there's a paragraph that I think we need to read in there.
Go ahead and read
I
it.
don't think you should have backup, but it does say, amounts in excess of the good economic times, percentage will be assigned by the recommendation of the Board of Finance, forwarded to the Board of Selectmen and to town meeting in accordance with town charter. So that legally means that we make the choices and you guys send it to town meeting.
Well, it says according to the town charter.
Right, right.
That's good. You could read the town charter if you want.
Well, I can, and I can call the lawyers tomorrow too. I mean, we don't
Well,
have to
that's
get
okay.
petty about this.
What?
It's something we're trying to put forward, and digging is not really appreciated.
Well, I think, like I said, I want to be prepared at the town meeting to have all the answers to these questions. So, and I would say that, let me go through the CIP book and let me ask Kathy for the details of the Board of Education monies, and then we'll move it to a town meeting.
after we have a time to review it.
Right. So,
Okay, well then, I spent my time here tonight.
Thank you.
From Boston, I'm gonna go home.
See you later.
okay. Any further discussion?
No.
Okay,
He makes it a change.
Let's keep going.
yeah. Is there a problem here? If you guys want it, you're going to, thank you very much. Okay, we're going on to the 11B, discussion of annual budget mailing. And there's copies of that on the table. And I just thought I'd go through it quickly. If you guys have any comments, that's fine. I actually have copies of the mailer here, too, if you want one, Charlie.
Yes, I do, thank you.
There's initially there's a graph of the grand list. Actually, in the flyer, the amounts were cut off. So the reevaluation was in 2012, and and most of those are in millions, but 2009 there's a 483,000, and in 2014 there's a 296,000.
Can we correct that so that you can tell the scale?
Say that again.
So you're pointing out that the change in grand list values in mostly is in millions.
Millions.
With a few exceptions that are in thousands, and those are the, I didn't know that, and when I'm looking at these, thinking like, what caused a grand list change of $480 million?
Yes, I agree.
So that, if we could just scale that in some way, so that people at home can read it.
Well, the graph is correct. It's just that in the printing of this, the monies, this should have arrived at homes today.
It did.
And I realized today that the monies, the millions and the thousands, were not printed, nor were the below it, where the graph is that shows the BOE portion and the BOS portion and the debt and CNR portion are not labeled. Those graphs, you don't know necessarily which line stands for what. And the one that was mailed and the one that's on the table, you do.
So this is going out.
Yes.
Okay. Do we need to do anything with this?
No, not a thing. So the total expenditure increase is 4.84%. It says here at the bottom, the board urges you to vote on the recommended budget for 2019-20, and I assume the board's the Board of Finance, but I personally believe that that's a fair number, and I would recommend people vote on that 4.84% also. If you go on the back, there's a breakdown, and I know you had a question about revenue, and actually the revenue this year is about $500,000 more than last year. although the prior year, it was about the same. And then it lists the capital improvement projects. And then I guess the last page is kind of an overview of the revenue and expenditures. Also, what we're considering doing, and I'll pass this out, is doing some bonding next spring. And there's time to firm this up, but just to go through it, there's a Highland Avenue bridge culvert for $500,000, Water Street culvert for $500,000, Norton Road culvert for $125,000, East Road culvert for $45,000, and the East Windsor Park outlet structure for $200,000. And then additionally, the Department of Public Works roof replacement for $426,000, Senior Center and Rubber Department roof replacement for $163,000, and then paving Tromley Road for $394,000, Wells Road paving for $485,000, and Scantic Road paving for $529,000. So in addition to the money we've appropriated for the budget, we're going to do some additional infrastructure construction within the next year. So we'll probably, and then there's some money for roads in the CNR presently. So I think in the next 2 years, we'll spend over $3 million on roads. So that should be a good thing for the town, I think.
So this is potential bonding item.
Potential bonding.
How many bonds are out now that we're paying for what, do you know?
I don't know the exact amount. I don't know that now. But it's very low. We have the lowest debt payment. If you look at the debt payment for this year, it's very low. And
You know when they, well, you help them know when they expire too, you know?
Yeah, well, and we put on new debts of about, I think about 2 million. So, but that was
I
because.
don't know, was it concluded, the thing I didn't see in here, was it concluded that the fire truck requested by Broadbrook, was that going to be bonded? And
Yeah,
I thought it was going to be lease purchase and, you know, what.
I'm not sure. Maybe.
'Cause I don't see
Geraldine,
that
do you
here.
know that about the Broadbrook fire truck? How we're going to finance that?
You guys were talking about putting it in the bond, in the bonding process. That's what you.
Okay, rather than lease to buy.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys discussed bonding.
Okay.
So it should be added.
It should be, yes. Okay, is there any further questions or discussion about the annual budget mailer?
No.
Okay, is there a motion?
Was this included in the budget?
No, it wasn't.
No.
Okay, is there a motion for tax refund approval?
Move to approve the tax refunds in an amount equal to $1,660.62.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Selectmen reports, Jason.
On Saturday of this past weekend was Abby's Helping Hands annual walk. It was really wet weather, at least the night before, but there were still about 300 people or so who showed up, and they supported the organization quite well and will allow them to continue doing the good work that they do. I'm not going to share the specific dollar amount because I'm not sure that I should, but it was another successful event and remains my favorite day of the year to be involved in the town of East Windsor. On a very sad note, I'm going to report that Cliff Nelson passed away a couple days ago. So Dale certainly is in my thoughts as she goes through a very hard time. And then I would just encourage everybody to participate in the referendum on the 14th.
Had he been ill for a while?
Yeah.
Okay, Charlie. Okay, Steve? Any, okay, and Andy?
We did have an Economic Development Commission meeting past week or so, and the focus is on the EDC webpage. Bob and I are taking a look at that. I'm not much help except for maybe some ideas. Bob's doing all the heavy lifting work on that. But we are going to try to get a decent looking web page. It does not require a lot of reading. Something that when you open it, it tells a story without having to force people to do a whole bunch of reading. One of the things we're thinking about are some drone shots of like our of our industrial park and flying a drone down Route 5, having an open page that has some pop-ups that shows the town hall in the center, and then maybe something like Southern Autos pop up and go back in again, and other businesses in town to do that, so that people, along with a map of the town and the demographics that make us a desirable spot. I think that we can do that, and I think that we should have a product by midsummer that is something to look at and has value.
Good, that'll be good.
Okay, and I do have to say that on April 29th, Monday, I went to the State Legislative Office Building and I testified before the Government Administration and Election Committee, and I put before them the idea that if they would want, they would consolidate the Albert Solnit North and South campuses for children and with severe psychiatric problems, and there's the Albert Solnit Campus South is in Middletown, that they consider transferring or conveying the land that is the Albert Solnit Campus North, which is the children's home or the male children's, I guess between the ages of 13 and 17 here in East Windsor, to the town of East Windsor. So at least I made the state aware that we would be interested in pursuing that. So that's on their radar.
I understand that that bill caught the attention of DCF and OPM, or your testimony in particular.
Oh, okay. It was interesting how that occurred, because I got this General Assembly conveyance questionnaire from the Legislative Commissioner's office. So I said, well, yeah, I said you're interested. And then I did call up the Department of Children and Families when I submitted this questionnaire and said, heads up, I just submitted a questionnaire. And the commissioner directed me to this guy, and I think his name is, let's see if I have it here. It's, David Berry, his name was. He's apparently the financial officer for DCF, and he said, well, it's still operational, so we really don't want to give it away. And I said, well, I'm just letting you know that I applied for it. And then it did catch their attention. They said, no, and it is a nice campus. So.
Hey, Bob, I just want to make a comment. You know, with this tax increase of 4.17%,
I think it's an expenditure increase. Was it,
well,
was it that?
this would represent a tax increase of 4.17%.
Yeah,
So
okay, yeah, yeah.
Anybody who pays $5,000 tax on their house now, they're gonna be paying over $200 more.
Mm-hmm.
My place down the street here, I'm gonna be paying over $1,000 more with that increase. And the Board of Education, their increase is 6.18%. And the town's is 4.84%. That's overall. You combine the town and
Well, yeah, when you
the
combine the
board.
time and the board, I think the
But,
town, depending on how you look at it, it's either here it says 3.47, and then if you
Right.
included, it would be lower than that if you included the capital non-reoccurring and debt service, but about 3.47 is
6.18% for the Board of Ed is unacceptable to me, and I will have signs out to vote no for the budget. So that's my comment.
okay. Okay, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Excellent. Me too.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, have we signed the check registers?
I did not.
See, now they're giving them their second card. Okay, which is bullshit.
We've got to sign it.
Enough, You know what they did, the state did down at the Capitol yesterday?
What they do?
You know, some of my property, might have another place to go, right in town. I told my wife, it's a great thing. Yeah, turn that thing on. No one needs to know what I'm talking about. Although I want you people all to vote no on the budget.